So far, so good? All right, last few. There's also archetypes and story structures. We're going to see that when you're watching movies, TV shows, reading books. There's also archetypes and story structures. Just get this dude's name down, Christopher Booker, 7 Basic Plots. Christopher Booker, 7 Basic Plots. This is a book. And in this book, he outlines, well, exactly what it promises. There are 7 basic story structures. When you're watching a movie or TV show, if you know what these are, you're never going to be surprised by another TV show or movie in your life. This is the stuff that makes it difficult for people to watch movies with you. Because when you know the archetypes, and you know the basic plot points, and then you know like the essential steps of each of these, when you're watching it, when you're watching a movie, you'll get 15 minutes into it, and you'll lean to the person next to you and go, all right, here's how it ends. Here's what's going to happen. Here's who the characters are going to be. That's the bad guy. You know, like I remember I went and watched Wonder Woman, I think it was, a while back with some people. And if any of you have seen the first Wonder Woman, at the very beginning, you meet the villain. But he pretends to not be the villain. He pretends to be the sage. He pretends to be the helpful person. But all of his characteristics line up with being the villain. And then there's a guy who they try to convince you is the villain, but he's not. He turns out to not be the villain. And I remember watching that and saying to someone next to me, that's the villain right there, not the guy they're presenting, and here's how it's going to end. And this person just said to me, shut up and watch the movie. You'll get a lot of that, unless you learn to keep your mouth shut. But these are the basic structure, basic plot structures. The character is either overcoming a monster, and they set out to overcome some kind of antagonist. Or there's a rags to riches story where someone starts off poor or in some dejected state, and then ends up in a much better state. You know, they become wealthy or whatever. Rags to riches story. The quest. They're off on a journey to go acquire an object or something. If any of you guys have tortured yourselves and sat through the Lord of the Rings, you know what that one is. A voyage and return. The protagonist goes off on a voyage and returns back to tell the story about it. A comedy, challenging circumstances, and have a happy conclusion to them. Tragedy, character's flaws lead to their downfall. Rebirth, where a person, a character like the Matrix is a wonderful example of rebirth, where a character almost seems to like die and become somebody else and come back as something else. So these are all examples. These are the essential 7 basic plots that you'll encounter in any movie. And also get down this guy's name, Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. Hero's Journey. So Professor Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, where he did a deep dive into the specific archetype of the hero and traced how the hero was presented throughout time, throughout literature, throughout plays, poems, going back thousands of years from cultures all over the world. Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey. The book itself is called Hero with 1,000 Faces. And what he points out is that, in short, the hero's journey follows very specific guidelines. If any of you guys are Star Wars fans, George Lucas, who wrote Star Wars, he had a copy of this book, and he made his outline for Star Wars just follow this exactly. And that's probably why the franchise has been so successful, because it aligns perfectly with what we think the hero is supposed to be. And then you look at the new Star Wars that came out, and we all kind of realize that they're pretty lackluster and all that, because they don't follow these things. They try really hard to subvert our expectations, in which case they take a hero's journey and they make it into the rebel outlaw thing. Just like if you try to do that in your personal life, you're going to feel unsatisfied. The same happens in art when we see it. It doesn't fulfill its type. Now, not every hero is going to go through all of these steps, but you'll see it happen. Like if you look at Harry Potter gets called. There's a call to adventure, where he finds out that he's a wizard, but then he refuses the call, and he's like, no, I can't be a wizard. Imagine if the movie just ended there, boom, credits roll. And then what happens in Harry Potter's life? He goes off and gets a job working in an office somewhere, maybe as a clerk, maybe as an accountant, and he lives his whole life thinking, man, this sucks, completely dissatisfied, like he doesn't belong, and he dies miserable with 2 stomach ulcers. That's how most people's lives end up. But what the difference with the hero is that the hero refuses the call at first, but then actually responds to it. and comes back. Something happens. You know, the owls show up and drop off the letter. Hagrid shows up and tells him, "You're a wizard, Harry." It's that supernatural aid that then calls the hero back. And rather than just go off into their life of being an accountant with an ulcer, instead they return and they go back, they cross that first threshold, and they accept the call to action. And then, I won't go through all of them, then the rest of them there's like a road of trials, they meet with a goddess, there's an ultimate boon, and finally there's the freedom to live, where at the end the hero comes back and then has their story told, so that we can all learn from it. So, that's his overall kind of thing there. Yeah. That's it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms?